What's the most common mistake in LP rounds that you saw as an interviewer?
At Amazon, there's not anything that's not an LP round, is the first thing to understand. Um, the only maybe exception to that is if I'm assigned to focus on your functional skills. And what I mean by that is if I'm giving you a coding test or an architecture test, or I'm, let's say you're an accountant and I'm checking your ability, to read or create a financial statement. But even there, some LP will be overlaid on what I'm looking at. And it'll be something like dive deep or R write a lot that's related to how detailed are you or how correct are you. So there is no non-LP interview at Amazon. The only thing I would say is close to it is when we interviewed designers, visual designers, UX designers, they would have an hour that was portfolio review, where basically they show off things they've made. Those didn't tend to have LPs. That was more looking at their actual work product. But that's the only case I can think of where there's no assigned LP. So then, to your question, what's the biggest mistake? I don't think it's specific to a given LP, because you can make mistakes in how you interview generally and in all of the leadership principles. But I think the biggest mistake that's preventable is it's totally fine. Amazon interviewing questions are always phrased in the form, tell me about a time when. Tell me about a time when you had conflict with a peer. Tell me about a time when you faced a tight deadline that didn't seem possible to achieve, on and on. Well, you can, of course, say, I don't know if I have a great example for that exact question. You can do that once. The biggest mistake is that people are like, I don't know. I don't know if I have an example for that, over and over. If you're going to go and interview at Amazon, you got to have your stories ready. Now, that doesn't mean that they're canned, and it doesn't mean that you have to have a story for every possible situation, but you have to have some sense of these are the things I've done and I can relate them to your question. Because I don't know exactly what question I'm going to get, but I'm going to get some question about what I've done and what are the major things I've done that exemplify the different LPs. Can I talk to them? That's the mistake that is related to the style of interviewing.
Right. What about, would you say that that is more frequent or less frequent than candidates who just come in and word vomit their answers?
Hey, if you're enjoying this conversation about Amazon interviews, be sure to check out Exponent's Amazon interview prep course and engineering manager prep course with mock interviews and breakdowns of every single leadership principle.
So nervousness causes lots of people to overtalk. And also you can have you can come off as inauthentic if when I ask you a question, it feels like I accidentally pressed play on a recording.
Right.
Yes. Answer 7, let me tell you about the time. So you want to tell stories and answer questions from your real experience, not from sort of a script. So there's value to reviewing what stories apply to what situations. I don't think there's value to practicing this is my answer to whatever question, it's a deliver results question. Well, interestingly, a lot of questions could be about multiple leadership principles. So when I ask you about a tight deadline, you might think that's a question about deliver results. That's what I had in my head when I said, I ask you about a tight deadline. But I could be asking that about high standards. Do you have high standards for how you inspire your team and what you expect from them? I could be asking that as a form of disagree and commit. Like, did you fight for what you believe is the right deadline? Are you committed to the project? Those things. And so my point is, a mistake you can make is to decide what the interviewer is asking behind the question and then answer
Mm-hmm.
to that, because
Mm-hmm.
they may in fact be asking something completely different.
It sounds like you think it's a bad idea to try to guess what the underlying LP a question is asking about.
I do. I think a much better tactic um, is tell a story about what they seem to ask about. If you're not sure what they ask about, clarify up front and say, do you mean this or that? Like, are you more interested in how I hit that schedule, or how I agreed to the schedule, or how I sold it to the team? Like, what
Mm,
that, and then the last thing you can ask that, or at the end, another trick technique is just to say, did I answer your question? And I love the question, did I answer your question, for like three reasons. First, um, if the person says yes, psychologically, even if they weren't sure they liked your answer, once they say yes, they've kind of committed themselves to feeling it was a good answer. On the other hand, if they say not really, um, then nobody just says, well, not really, but let's move on. They all understand they have to say, well, not really. I was looking to know more about this. And
right.
almost always, if they're trying to be clever and ask you an oblique question,
Mm,
when they realize you missed the point, the second version of like, well, I was really just looking more to know, how do you push your team on a tight deadline? Like, how do you push them? Then you'll get a more honest question, because
mm,
they're
mm.
not as most people aren't able to facilitate a new like roundabout question. They have to give you a more straight answer. And the third thing is, uh, it just shows um, good interaction. It shows that you're paying attention, that you're trying to be helpful. So on so many levels, using this idea, did I answer your question? You just don't want to repeat that again like a robot after every question. Did I
Right.
answer your question? Did I answer your question? That said, you can get away if you put a little thought into it. You can ask it like half the time by you say, did I answer your question one time? And then later I'd say, Kevin, did I cover everything you were looking for? And
Right.
I've really said, did I answer your question? But like I can come up with like 3 or 4 different ways to go at that. Another way is, Kevin, was there anything else you wanted to know about that?
I really
Gosh,
like this,
I'm
Ethan.
I'm
This is
dragging
this
you
is
into it, right? Go ahead.
this is a good trick because the most common follow-up question that I hear from interviewers, they'll ask, "Tell me about a time you had a conflict with your manager." And the first follow-up question, "What was the conflict?" Meaning you didn't answer the question, you answered something else.
Mm,
So you're avoiding that obvious follow-up question, which makes you look a little silly by asking it yourself and
yeah.
saying, "Did I answer?" I love that.